Catherine Forster, GB News. There are warnings from Germany that Russia could invade a NATO ally as soon as in the next 4 years. You haven't even committed to get to 3% in the next 9 years. Lord Richard Dannett this morning said that this is simply not going to cut the mustard. One of your favourite phrases, going further and faster. Shouldn't you be going further and faster on this now? And linked to that, part of keeping British people safe is border security. You scrapped the Rwanda deterrent. You promised to smash the gangs who are clearly running rings around us. Crossings are up 42% this year compared to last. Aren't you failing to keep us safe in the English Channel?
Well, let's start with the question of Ukraine, because I think it's fair to say that the UK has been a steadfast ally of Ukraine since the very beginning of this conflict and continues to play a central part. And I'm very proud of the support that we give to Ukraine, and very alert to the continued threat from Russia, whether that's continuing in Ukraine or the wider threat. And as I mentioned in my speech, don't forget that Russia is already menacing our skies and our waters and cyber attacks. So this is a real threat that we are dealing with. I believe that the best way to deter conflict is to prepare for it, which is why we commissioned this report, this review, and why we will now act on this review. Going further and faster in what we're doing, which we have already done with pushing up defence spend to 2.5% by 2027. That wasn't in the manifesto of any of the parties going into the election, by the way. That is a commitment we've made since we've been in government. We will keep to, and that is the mindset, but also a mindset change that this must produce the defence dividend in the jobs and the opportunities here in the United Kingdom as we spend more money. In relation to border security, I want to be really clear, nobody should be making that journey across the channel, and it's our duty to make sure that we ensure that they don't. We are working very closely with our counterparts in France and elsewhere to take further action in northern France, and of course we are giving enhanced powers to our own law enforcement through the Borders Bill, which is currently going through Parliament. The reason we stood down the Rwanda scheme was because it cost a fortune and only a handful of people went on a voluntary basis to Rwanda, and it didn't deter anybody. I'm not up for gimmicks. I'm up for the hard work of working with partners, enhancing the powers that law enforcement have in my determination to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade.
When Catherine Forster confronted Keir Starmer live on GB News, it wasn't just a question. It was a full-blown indictment of his leadership. Aren't you failing to keep us safe? That one sentence echoed what millions across the UK are thinking. This Prime Minister is out of his depth, and worse, he's pretending not to notice. While Germany issues urgent warnings that Russia could invade a NATO ally within the next 4 years, Starmer dances around the issue with vague promises about increasing defense spending in the coming years. No concrete timeline. No serious commitment. No urgency. At a time when national security demands bold leadership, Starmer is still reading from a dusty script full of buzzwords like mindset and defense dividend, as if those phrases can replace real-world action. And let's not forget the absolute disaster that is border security under Starmer's watch. He scrapped the Rwanda policy, a controversial plan. Yes, but at least it was a deterrent. What's replaced it? Nothing of substance. Illegal crossings across the English Channel have surged, up dramatically compared to last year. That's not policy. That's not policy. That's surrender. He once promised to smash the gangs running the human trafficking trade. Now, he quietly admits the Rwanda plan was too expensive and didn't deter anyone. Well, whose job was it to make it work? If it failed, that failure lands squarely on his shoulders. Starmer claims he doesn't do gimmicks, but that's the joke. His entire immigration and border approach is a gimmick. It's all optics, all fluff. Reports are commissioned. Reviews are conducted. Speeches are made. But nothing changes. Meanwhile, criminal gangs are thriving, and British taxpayers are footing the bill for a prime minister who seems more interested in dialogue with France than actually sealing our borders. His so-called enhanced powers for border enforcement, still stuck in Parliament, still just theoretical.
A staggering 1,194 arrived on our shores on Saturday alone. It's a record. We're looking at realistically 50,000, largely young men of fighting age, arriving on our shores. If we can't protect our borders from them, can we really trust we can protect our borders from an invading force?
So what I would say is we've been in government now for 10 months. We've removed 30,000 individuals. What I would also say is...
Well, you haven't.
What I would say...
No, with all due respect, Alistair Cairns, with due respect...
What I'd say is we've pushed 30,000 people back.
Most of those were voluntary. They were voluntary. They weren't even deportations. Alistair Cairns, you're not talking about the same thing. You're not talking about 30,000 largely young men who've arrived on our shores on migrant boats. You're talking about people who've had voluntary repatriation to their country. That's not the same thing.
What I'm actually talking about is the Strategic Defence Review, which is one of the most and the biggest important announcements that we've made today.
It is, and we have spoken about that for some time, and it is a relevant question, is it not? Given that the first job of government is to defend our nation's borders. Are you confident, given that 2,000 largely young men arrived on our shores on Saturday, are you genuine? How can we defend our borders from a force with arms when we can't defend our borders from young undocumented men? They don't even have a passport, let alone a gun.
What I would say is be careful of the fickle one-liners you're getting from other parties that say that this is an easy fix. It's a multifaceted problem that needs a really, really deep strategic look at. And the Prime Minister's got this. And he's pushing really hard to work with the French, work with the Europeans collaboratively.
How's that working?
To deal with this migrant issue.
It's gone up. It's gone up by 40% since he's been in power.
It takes time to sort these problems out.
Why? I thought he was going to get round the table with Macron and it was all going to be fine.
People already. I would argue that your listeners would prefer to hear one of our answers. So
well,
perhaps
not if your answer is actually... no, the 30,000. Who are you referring to with the 30,000? Because I know who you're referring to, but you tell me who you think you're referring to.
So when I was in the military, we were tasked to have a look at the migrant issue. Mm-hmm. So how could the military support? And this links to the Strategic Defence Review. And what we found actually that from a military perspective, given the rules of the sea and the legal parameters that are wrapped around this issue, it was very difficult to deliver a single solution to the problem.
Julia Hartley. Brewer's scorching takedown of Defence Minister Alistair Cairns hits at the very heart of the UK's growing national security crisis, and the hypocrisy surrounding it. When she posed the brutal question, how can we defend our borders from a force with arms when we can't defend our borders from young, undocumented men? She wasn't just being rhetorical. She was exposing the absolute absurdity of the government's priorities and failures in the most public and humiliating way possible. Let's be clear. 1194 migrants crossing the English Channel in a single day isn't just a statistic. It's a symptom of a broken system, an unprotected border, and a government that keeps promising control while delivering chaos. This isn't a humanitarian crisis anymore. It's a national one. These are not vulnerable families escaping war zones. Many are undocumented young men with no papers, no vetting, and no way to trace them. And yet, while this surge continues, the government still postures as if it's ready to repel full-scale military threats. How? With what credibility? Julia's point lands because it cuts through the spin. You can't seriously talk about defending Britain from Russia, China, or Iran, while literal boatloads of undocumented individuals arrive on your shores daily without resistance. The Ministry of Defense boasts about preparedness for foreign conflict, but can't even muster the logistical will to deter organized smuggling operations across a few dozen miles of water. Alistair Cairns' response, like most from this government, was predictably hollow. Buzzwords about partnerships, processing, and future legislation no longer carry any weight. The British public is exhausted by empty promises and flashy policies that never materialize into actual enforcement.